Hi, this is Eric Durack for Medhealthfit Commentary. Today's comments are about cigarette funds. Where did they all go? A windfall of money from tobacco companies, but none for prevention. Since 1998, the U.S. Justice Department and 46 states' attorney general have been collecting the sum of $10 billion a year from tobacco companies. Well, one would think that being forced to give a large portion of your profits to the U.S. government, the days of big tobacco would have ended years ago. The issue then comes from this question: where did all this money go? Tobacco prevention programs state to state? Nope. According to the website Public Health Law Center, states have been collecting record numbers of tobacco money from the companies over the past 20 years, but only one state, North Dakota, even funds tobacco prevention, and at half the level the CDC recommends. The Master Settlement Agreement, or the MSA, came about due to lawsuits from several different states against manufacturers such as Philip Morris, R.J. Reynolds, Brown & Williamson, and Lorimar, to recover a portion of the healthcare costs that the states and the federal government were paying for tobacco-related illnesses, usually covered by Medicare and state Medicaid mechanisms. So in 1998, these states entered into the largest litigation settlement in U.S. history. In lieu of making payments to individual families and class action groups, the MSA manufacturers agreed to make annual payments in perpetuity to the settling states to compensate them for taxpayer money spent on healthcare costs related to tobacco illnesses. The MSA states the standards and imposes the restrictions on the sale and marketing of tobacco programs and the company conduct. These companies have been paying a base amount for years with increasing costs. In 2000, it was $4.5 billion, then $6.5 billion, a few years later, $8.4 billion, and in 2017, $9 billion. The calculations are complicated as the money is spread around to different types of payments and it's adjusted for inflation, etc. The MSA also regulates the use of marketing, such as billboards, cartoon characters, free samples, branded merchandise, etc., and it creates a prevention foundation called the American Legacy Foundation that focuses efforts on preventing teen smoking and encouraging smokers to quit. All enforced by states' attorneys general. And again, it begs the question, where's all this money going? Because it's certainly not going for youth tobacco programs. In the executive summary of Broken Promises report, they state that in 2015 fiscal year, states collected $25.6 billion from tobacco settlement taxes, but they only spent 1.9% or $490 million on tobacco prevention for children and smokers quitting programs. The state's failure to fund prevention and cessation programs is actually undermining the nation's effort to reduce tobacco use, the #1 cause of preventable death in the U.S. It is also indefensible, given the conclusive evidence that such programs reduce smoking, and they also save lives. These costs total about $170 billion, according to a report from the CDC. However, according to the Broken Promises report, the state of Florida saw a drop in teen smoking to a low of 7.5% back in 2014, one of the lowest states ever recorded. Florida is well funded, but they have the same percentages as national that are allocated to them. Then what's the cause of this drop? Well, I believe it has a lot to do with e-cigarettes. They came into vogue about 2005, and since then the concept of vaping using devices such as Juul have transplanted cigarette smoking as the new cool. And for those who are smoking on the scene, companies such as Juul state that they are committed to reducing cigarette smoking, and that their take is 95% of all tobacco-related heart and cancer incidences are related to the burning of tobacco products, not the inherent use of nicotine itself. They point to coffee, which has caffeine, which is a sister herb to nicotine, and that used as a standard product alone, nicotine does not produce the carcinogenic effects, and the use of cigarettes do. Vaping companies also state that they want to be part of the solution. In a personal communication to Dr. Brad Radu, who's a professor at the University of Louisville, who's actually been involved with tobacco control research in the early 1990s, he states that in recent reports, the use of e-cigarettes was the second most common use method for quitting cigarettes behind help and family and friends. Americans use more of this than nicotine replacement products or prescription drugs, which many think have far more problematic side effects than the nicotine used with vaping. Studies show that in California, which has the nation's longest running tobacco prevention and cessation program, has saved tens of thousands of lives by reducing cigarette-caused birth complications, heart disease, strokes, and lung cancer. Lung cancer rates in California have decreased by 33% from 1998 to 2011, while the rest of the U.S. has decreased by only 11% around that same time frame. Research have associated the declines in lung cancer with the efforts of California's programs. So a February 2000 study in the journal PLOS One found that from 1989 to 2008, California's tobacco program reduced costs of healthcare by $134 billion, far more than spent on the tobacco program. The tobacco industry is ultimately directly responsible for cigarette marketing and its contents, and its efforts are not directed towards attracting new smokers. According to Philip Morris, they quote, "Our marketing programs are designed to enhance brand awareness, recognition, and loyalty among adult smokers while honoring the company's commitment to responsible marketing," unquote. The tobacco industry uses brand loyalty as the main justification for its marketing efforts. Furthermore, other elements of society that indirectly market tobacco are not regulated. One example is the number of TV shows glamorizing smoking, which has decreased over the last decade. However, in television shows, characters are still smoking, and in one show, a long time-running animated series called The Simpsons, claims to be family programming, yet every major character on this show has been documented with a cigarette. Both Bart and Lisa, the adolescent main characters, have smoked, and even Maggie, the infant sister of Bart and Lisa, has been seen sucking on a cigarette. Of greater concern is the proliferation of cable TV shows over the past decade. HBO, Showtime, Netflix, and Amazon Prime produce and show their own brand of comedies, dramas, and even musicals. Of interest is that looking at Netflix programming, the resurgence of smoking is underway. Well, one would expect period pieces such as Peaky Blinders, which is based on the turn-of-the-century English game, would have a lot of smoking. And shows like The Crown would show people smoking in the 1950s and 60s because it was fashionable. And even shows like Glow, which depicts 1980s Los Angeles back alley entertainment. Just like the hit show Mad Men, which every major character smoked at some level, but that was that time, and those shows represented it. However, current cable shows like Breaking Bad and its spin-off Better Call Saul, which represents the seedy side of life, show a lot of smoking, as do shows such as Shameless, which is about a South Side Chicago family whose dysfunction knows no bounds, Stranger Things, in which both characters smoke, and even House of Cards, where the president and first lady are both closet smokers. Even our lovable loser, Hank Moody from Californication, is a serial smoker. It's painful to watch, but it's part of his in-the-gutter character in which actor David Duchovny had to smoke so much over 7 seasons. Well, one might expect that these shows that depict violence, such as Narcos and Sons of Anarchy, would show more smoking, and of course they do. But it's more a part of their culture. Perhaps this is why these shows are produced, because the characters that they portray as edgier, and they thus normalize smoking within this group, both children and adults. But let's not forget about TV shows like Frankie and Grace and Disjointed, where pot smoking is part of the norm, even when regular cigarette smoking isn't featured. Out of the hundreds of shows that are in production over the past decade on cable, the majority of them feature some type of smoking, either a major or a minor character. Since less than 33% of Americans smoke and less than 13% of Californians, then the perception of smoking in many of life's situations has now become normalized. This is, in my opinion, a brilliant marketing ploy by tobacco companies, as they're hamstrung in most other situations because of that original MSA agreement and state laws affecting smoking. However, showing your favorite character smoking is a really good form of free advertising, and it'll maintain a certain percentage of current smokers who will subconsciously remain smokers because they constantly see their favorite character smoke on their favorite TV shows. So it begs the question, after looking over the Tobacco-Free Kids website and seeing the small percentage of the total tobacco revenue settlement money that goes to these states, I ask again, where does all that money go? Well, the answer may lie in an investigative piece by ProPublica finance reporter Cesare Podkul, who nosed around to find that states who were awarded tobacco settlement money, which should have trickled down year by year, They were actually approached by Wall Street investment groups such as Citigroup, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Bear Stearns, and Lehman Brothers, the latter two are now out of business, to trade in their initial settlements for cash payments now and agree to pay back these, quote, loans down the road in less than 10 years for balloon payments, and some more than 10 times their original payment. So as stupid as most of these government officials were, they took the initial payments, including the finance departments in places like Puerto Rico, in a process which is called securitization. Those smart finance directors who opposed it, and there weren't many of those, they were overridden by governors, state attorneys general, and others who wanted a bigger payout now and didn't worry about future debt prospects. So after investigating for only 2 short days, I figured out where the money went. It has gone down the wasteland of bureaucratic corruption to line the pockets of state officials, lawyers, and district supervisors. According to the edits of the original MSA contracts, states could decide. Well, they decided to steal it before it ever reached the hands of the mere smoking prevention and cessation counselors. It's too important for them to give bigger salaries, more raises, and higher pensions to those who should not see 1 cent of this money. They don't care if people quit smoking. Think about it. If smoking in the U.S. dropped off by 10% in 5 years, hey, it could happen, then that's a lot less money that these municipalities don't have for the above-mentioned perks. So, smoke them if you got them, America. Your political hacks need your money. This is the biggest trough that they've had to gorge on in quite a while. Of course, with all the smoke and confusion, there's really no end in sight. This is Eric Durack for Medhealthfit Commentary. Thanks for watching. For more information, log on to medhealthfit.com.